Hello, everyone. My name is Eileen Olguin, and I am a senior here at the University of Idaho, majoring in sociology with a criminology emphasis. Many student organizations, including mine, Kappa Delta Chi Sorority, have been looking to host Guerra for a very long time. So as you can imagine, I'm very happy to introduce her tonight. This program is sponsored by the Office of Multicultural Affairs, the College Assistant Migrant Program, the Women's Center, and the Latinx Heritage Month Planning Committee. On behalf of these organizations, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who is attending our program tonight. Today marks the last day of the National Latinx Heritage Month, a month that brings an opportunity to eliminate ignorance, prejudice, and fear through education about multiculturalism, and to also recognize the history of the contributions of the Latinx communities. Even though it is technically the last day of Latinx Heritage Month, here at the University of Idaho, we celebrate our communities every day of the year. Before I introduce Kim, I want to remind you all that if you have any questions throughout Kim's presentation, please type them in the chat box. We will have time at the end saved to answer as many questions as we can. As a first-generation college graduate and daughter of immigrant parents, Kim Guerra is passionate about empowering students and sharing her own story of resiliency. She writes poems and affirmations exploring the complexities of being a woman, Latinx, person of color, and a survivor. Guerra considers her work for mujeres who love themselves, people who are healing, those who are ready to glow, those who are revolutionary, and those who are brown and badass. While living in Seattle, Kim created Brown Badass Bonita, a branded movement centered around inspiring and empowering mujeres to give them wings through revolutionary self-love. Presenting her webinar, An Invitation to the Latinx Revolution, please join me in welcoming author, creator, poet, and entrepreneur, Kim Guerra.
Hello, hi everybody, and thank you, Eileen, for the beautiful introduction and also just setting the space and the tone for this webinar. Thank you all for joining, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to introduce myself, talk a little bit about my story, and I always welcome questions. This is a conversation, it is an invitation, and I love achievement. So anything that comes up for you as I'm sharing, as I'm speaking, I want you to engage and send a question or say, I want to learn more about this or tell us more about that. So achievement is welcome. And as I told the panelists, no question is off limits, but I do refuse the right, or I do have the right to refuse service to people if you're too chismosos. So, Kim Guerra, and I was born and raised in LA in what people would consider the hood. And I learned early on, when actually the first experience I had with my Latina identity was in middle school. And because I grew up in a community that was like 99% Latinx, and we all had the same upbringing. We all ate hot Cheetos. We spoke Spanish to each other. Our parents knew each other. And then I remember in middle school, I was like running in PE, and this one girl was just like, you know what they say about Mexicans? I was like, excuse me, I'm Mexican. What do they say? And then that is the beginning of, or an encounter of my Latina revolution, of where I was like, excuse me, no. And so that's wrong. And I didn't even know that it was called racism. I didn't even know that this girl that was my best friend, was saying stereotypical racist remarks. But I remember a little baby fire was born there, that you cannot talk trash about the people, because my people, because I'm proud of who we are. But also it made me feel some type of way about how our people were viewed stereotypically, and now we're seeing that in a magnified way. Me estoy adelantando, I'm going ahead of myself. But so little Brown Badass Bonita was born there. And I grew up in the hood, in and out. But I remember my mom told me, I always say, my mom said, if you want to get to college, you have to do it yourself because we can't afford it and we don't even know how to get there. So the next day, I knocked on the college counselor's office and I was like, hey, Ms. Drapkin, my mom said if I want to get to college, I need help. I need to do this on my own. So she sat me down and told me, this is what you need to do to get to college. She asked me, do you know what an SAT is? No. Do you know what the UCs are, what private schools are, what the Ivy League is? No. So she sat me down and schooled me on getting into college. With her help, I was able to apply and get into Cornell University. And I didn't even know it was an Ivy League until I got accepted. It was, I got this letter in the mail and it said, congrats, welcome to Ivy League, da, da, da. And I remember I like ran home, ran into the house and told my mom, like, hey, Ma, I got accepted to like an Ivy League. And she's like, ¿qué es eso? And I was like, well, it just means it's a good school. I was like, ah, well, of course you got into a good school. You're smart, at least like good job. And I remember feeling like, oh yeah, like, it's not a big deal. But I felt proud. And I knew that deep down my mom felt proud too. So then I remember when I first got to campus, I had to fly by myself. They lost my suitcases, and this was before Uber was a thing. So I remember getting to the tiny little airport, and I was like, oh, now what? Where do I go? What do I do? I don't know how to get from the airport to the university. And I heard this other family speak Spanish around me at the airport. I was like, hey, like, are you guys going to Cornell too? And they're like, yeah, like, do you need a ride? We're sharing a taxi. I'm like, yes, please. So the girl's parents, her name is Janet. I still remember her. That was like the only interaction pretty much that we had. But her parents were like, ándale, mija, vente, súbete al taxi y, vamos a la escuela. Let's get you to university. Got to the university. They had lost me maletas. I did not have my suitcases. I just had my carry-on. So I remember getting to this college by myself with a carry-on and feeling so out of place. I was looking around and there was like so many white people, and like not the white people that I was used to in LA. It was like white people, like white, rich, privileged, legacy people that knew exactly what they were doing, where they were going. They had their cars like packed to the brim with like all the cute dorm stuff from Target. And I was here with my carry-on, like being super grateful that I packed extra chones, extra undies in my carry-on. And I was just like, all right. I got in there, I put my bag down. I was like, I guess I'm in college now. And that was also another beginning, another important milestone of me realizing, okay, I am a Latina in a sea of white people, and I need to learn, or I already know how to swim, but I'm gonna try. I felt like I was about to drown in this place because I didn't see people that looked like me, that spoke like me, that had a similar background. This girl in my class was shopping casually. Instead of taking notes, yo también ahí de chismosa, I was over here looking at her laptop like, what is she shopping for? She was shopping for $5,000 bags in class, and she bought it. And I remember after class, I called my mom. I was like, Mommy, adivina que this girl just bought a $5,000 purse in class como si nada. And my mom said, like, that's kind of like half a year of rent for us. And my family and I, like, we're starting to see like the disparity between privilege and a person who grew up struggling. And I remember feeling that fire, and also feeling that internalized oppression, which I'm going to talk about more later on. And it was a constant weaving, a journey to build my identity of who I was in that moment, but also who I wanted to be. Because when you go to university and then you go back home, you feel like the different worlds. And I remember feeling that, the two different worlds where I grew up and I was raised, my roots, and also where I was currently planted, and feeling how different they were, and how you have to code switch and adapt and like learn all these rules that nobody even told you. Like, I remember in college, there were so many things I didn't even know, like going to a dinner and having all the different forks. And like, my family if we use a fork, we just use one. And mostly we use tortillas in our hands, like we eat tacos and tortas and, you know, quesadillas, and we don't need all these you know, utensils and stuff. Anyway, so college happened, and I felt it was a constant act of survival, a constant act of learning, a constant act of making the choice to stand up for myself and to speak up. But I was scared, and there was that imposter syndrome where I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I, you know, maybe I don't belong, or maybe these people belong more than me. And I remember one person even told me, you only got in because of affirmative action. And I remember going back to my dorm and sitting with myself. Is that little white boy right? And I was like, hell no. I was like, I worked my ass off for these grades. My family had to overcome probably like 10 times more than his family ever did, work harder, jump through hoops. I lost mi maletas. Not only do I belong here, they are blessed by my presence here, because I bring something that all these other privileged people don't. I bring ganas, I bring lucha, I bring like the strength of my ancestors with me. Like I worked and I deserve to be here. And again, that was like another stepping stone of like, actually, no, that person was wrong. I deserve to be here, and I'm going to show up. I'm going to take up space because I'm done shrinking into that little corner. Graduated, and then I moved to Seattle, and there was another sea of white people. They were liberal people. This was like a different type of white people, but I still felt I was drowning. And a little personal, I got married to a white dude, and that in itself, I can give a whole webinar on that, but I won't. But that was that is where I was at post college. Seattle, sea of white people, married to a white dude, not healthy. And then I felt I was drowning, and I missed my people. I missed my community. I missed that sense of purpose. And in a bathtub at 4 a.m., I decided, you know, I was like thinking about my identity, thinking about what it meant to be Latina for me. And that's where Brown Badass Bonita was born. And I wanted to celebrate who I am, mi cultura, and also to realize I can be brown, badass, and beautiful at the same time. And the media, I didn't see that in the media. I didn't see that at my school. I didn't see that widely represented. And I needed that for myself. It was like Vaporu for my heart, for my soul, for my spirit. And I was like, you know what, let's do this. So I made a shirt for myself, and I got my shirt. I'm gonna wear this as a statement. I'm gonna wear this as a shield. I'm gonna walk up and down Seattle, tell these people what's up. This is who I am, you know, get with it. And I put that picture of my shirt on Instagram, and it blew up. And people were like, I'm a brown badass Bonita too. Nobody had told me that before, but I am too. And it connected me from this place of like feeling I was like isolated in like the sea of white people. It connected me to mujeres all over the world. And it wasn't only mujeres, it was like people all over the world that were hungry to see the Latinx people through a lens of love and empowerment, of pride, and of believing in ourselves. And that is how Brown Badass Bonita, the brand and movement, was born. And people ask me like, how did Brown Badass Bonita start? I'm like, I was born like that, straight, you know, day one. Pero it took, as you see, it's like it was a journey of development, of developing that identity, and a journey of believing that to be true through different sources, through different environments in which I had to choose to believe I am a Latina, and I am proud, and I am so grateful and powerful and badass. And to see the other people in my community, in my culture, with that same lens. And it became a movement, and it became a source of community and life and inspiration for me. I started to write my poems. I always wrote, but I was always scared to share them. And I went to hear Prisca Dorcas speak, and she is the founder of Latina Rebels. And she was in Seattle, and she shared, only you can tell your story because it is yours. The white people with PhD in sociology and anthropology degrees are going to try to share your story, but you are the one that it belongs to, and you are the expert to your own story and what it's like to walk in your shoes and what it's like to take up space in academia, in your home, in your community, and in your person. So I started to write as a sense of empowerment and a sense of expression. And one poem at a time became a book. And then I went on tour, and every city I went to, it felt like coming home to my tias and primas. But I also got to listen to the stories of our community, of our people, of our women. And that's when I realized we are, as a community, so powerful, so resilient, and yet we are in need of healing. We are in need of growth. We are in need of starting a revolution, and that revolution starts within. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. The Latinx Revolution and what that looks like, and how it can start with you and your internal work. A lot of the work that is required by us as people, as Latinx people, is to unlearn internalized oppression. And when I mean internalized oppression is when you look at yourself through the oppressor's eyes. When you look at yourself, if you experience self-hate, if you experience shame, if you experience feeling kind of ashamed, that's internalized oppression. And at times when we are operating out of internalized oppression, then you also have the risk of being an oppressor. When you oppress other people, if you're a man, sometimes you oppress other women. If you're a woman, you can also oppress other women. And that's when we need to welcome, I think, and I'm a believer, that the antidote to internalized oppression is self-love and pride in who you are and developing your cultural identity. And for me, that took a long time. It took a journey from that moment in middle school when my friend was telling me, she like made a list of negative stereotypes about Latinx people. And part of me is like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to be like that. Or is that what people think about all of us? And I had to take time to realize, okay, that if I believe that, you know, now years later, I wasn't thinking this in middle school, years later, to think that I internalized some of those things. I internalized some of those negative stereotypes. And I tried so hard to prove that I wasn't like them, instead of confronting right there and then every time somebody said a negative stereotype or a racist remark. And part of learning our culture and identity is embracing our history, embracing our present, but also committing to creating a better future for ourselves and for our community and for our cultura. And I always tell women and men, we need to work together, because part of the revolution, men need to be a part of it, because I believe, and I've seen women lead the revolution as guerreras, you know, going out and doing all the emotional labor, doing the physical work too, that men need to be a part of that revolution. There's a lot of internalized machismo and oppression going on within our community, in academia too. In the classroom, I don't know if y'all saw, there's like recent viral videos of women in STEM and women in higher education who kept getting interrupted by men, as if como si no estuvieran hablando, as if they weren't talking. And we need to, as a community, because we love our community, because we love our culture, because we love ourselves, we need to grow, and we need to recognize the areas in which we need to grow. So part of that is taking a moment to see the areas in which you have internalized those messages, in which you've internalized machismo as a man and a woman. Cuando te dicen que cállate, te ves más bonita, that you have to serve, or as men, when you let people in your family, in your classroom, in your community, not treat others as equal, not treat women as equal, not treat other communities as equal, whether it's racism, homophobia, or sexism. When we don't say anything, we are being oppressive. And a big part of that is recognizing your own identity, your own intersections, your own areas of internalized oppression, and deciding to grow, and deciding that you love yourself enough to not stay there, that you love yourself enough to do and be better, and that you love your community enough to be a part of the growth and part of the solution and part of that revolution. I remember the first time my little brother, you know, I'm used to seeing him as this like annoying little crusty little person. I remember the first time he stood up for me. And, you know, my mom was going off about me, porque no soy una buena mujer, and this and that. And he's like, you don't treat me like that. I get to sit in your house and you serve me food, and you don't treat her like that. And as an equal, and if she's somebody that you love as your daughter, you need to treat her better. That's something I've been telling my moms for years. But because my brother, a man, said it, she listened. So as men, I see a lot of times the impact men have in our community. So if you want to use your power and privilege as a Latino male, that's when you're part of the revolution. When you speak up, when you hold people accountable, and when you hold especially other men accountable. When you listen to the women in your life and you honor and you value them. And mujeres, we are, and I know that you know this, that we are so powerful. I'm gonna say it. We're so fucking powerful. And our community and society and culture and academia tries to pass on that message of calladita te ves más bonita. But I'm here to tell you that that is one of the biggest lies and one of the biggest forms of oppression that our community has faced. Te ves más bonita, you look the most beautiful when you are loving yourself, when you are speaking up for yourself, when you are taking up space and showing up fully in all of your intelligence, in all of your strength, in all of your beauty, and all of your glory. And men, when you are supporting women growing and showing all the way up, instead of trying to silence them and have them meet your needs, that's when you're part of the revolution. And we need to be able and courageous enough and resilient and loving enough as a people to call one another out and to hold each other accountable and to see the areas in which our families, our community, our classrooms, our professors, our peers need to grow and glow the fuck up. I encourage you to be like the one that's brave enough to be like, hey, that's not cool. That's racist. That's sexist. That's homophobic. If you go home and you hear these jokes on the family table, those with your either the men or even las tías criticonas chismosas, we can change that by, and it doesn't even have to be hostile. I laugh, you know, I make them laugh, but also I make them think. And that's part of that revolution. And it doesn't have to be, you know, intense or crazy. It could just, you know, be a reflective question and an invitation. You can invite them too. Like, can you see that differently? I have two stories I want to share with you. And so I identify as bisexual. And after I got divorced, thank the Lord, um, I, I started dating a Latino. And he said or did something, and I was just like, that's not okay with me. That is sexist, and that is objectifying. And I know you can do better. He's like, I'm just a piece of trash, you know. And I was like, oh, no. I believe that you as a human being, you're not trash. Your behaviors may be trash. Your behaviors may be shitty, but the beautiful thing about that is that you can change behaviors and you can learn from them. So when you say, I'm trash, all men are trash, and the behaviors are trash, the cycles, the messages are trash, but you can change that and you can own that, hold yourself accountable, and try again and do better. Because I know your mama taught you better, and if you didn't, I'm teaching you better, and I'm not your mama, and you have to be the one doing the work. You have to be the one that does that internal work to not continue to pass on oppressive and internalized messages, to be the one that changes those cycles so that women stop being oppressed, so that sexism isn't associated with the Latinx culture. Because we are powerful and influential people. And especially right now, in this time and place that we're at, we're seeing how powerful and influential we are as a Latinx people. So we have to take that power, because minority is a mindset. And we, as I think this generation has made huge steps in calling our elders and parents out, but also, I wouldn't say out, calling them into conversation, calling them in to breaking those cycles that may still be oppressive in our community. And also, don't be afraid to do that at school. I remember in grad school, I'm about to finish, praise the Lord. I remember raising my hand, shy, and I was shaking, and asking professors, if you apply this theory to a non-white, non-middle class person, you are causing more harm. You are causing more pain. How does your theory apply to my family? How does your theory apply to the Latinx community? How does your theory apply to non-straight people, to the queer community? And we have that power in the classroom to bring in those questions, to take up that space, and to change the systems that are oppressing us. And you are going to start to realize how powerful and important and necessary your voice and your presence is in these institutions, in these systems, in your home, when you're hanging out with your homies, with your people. Your voice and your knowledge is instrumental, it's powerful, and it changes things. And all of that comes from a place of knowing who you are, but also who you want to become and who you want to see in the next generation. Like I think about going back to our homes, going back to our hood, and what messages we want our families and our communities to receive, and what we are going to be, how we are going to be a part of that, how we're going to be a part of delivering these messages to our communities from a place of love, and from a place in which they see us, that we have learned to love ourselves, and we have learned to stand up straighter, and that we have learned to embrace fully who we are and have stepped in and accepted our power. Because when you're in when you're in the sea of white people, they try to make you feel like, oh, I forgot how to swim, I'm about to drown. But once you step into your power, actually, not only do I know how to swim, my people My people are my boat. My people, my community is my life raft. And we're about to shine a little bit brighter, and we're about to show other people and our other community members to hop on this boat and to make a difference, to remind them, like, actually, you were not called to this place to drown. You were called to this place to be a leader. You were called to this place to stand up. You were called to this place to speak up and to change how the system works, to make it less oppressive for the people that come after you, for the next generation, for other kids in your community to see you and be like, they did it, I'm about to do it too, but I'm about to do it better. And you're about to give them the tools for how to not drown in these oceans and these seas. And you're about to be an instrument and a bridge from one generation to the other, because the messages that we pass on are important, and the messages that have been passed down to us, you know, are a part of us and are a part of how we show up in this world, how we show up in our classrooms, in our universities. And I want you to know and to challenge some of those messages if they're harmful to you, but also to pass on those messages to the next generation of, you are powerful, you are badass, you have so much to be proud of, your people are strong and resilient and unstoppable. Look at how many times they've tried to stop us, and we're still here and we're still rising. And we need to be a part of that change, and you already are, simply by being here and by taking up that space in your university, and by believing that you're worthy of being there and that they are blessed to have you. And as we step into these roles and we step into these communities, I want you to not be afraid to be great. I think a lot of times, like, we get to the university and we're like, all right, cool, I made it. Yes, you did. And we're cheering you on. And also, don't be afraid to keep dreaming bigger. Don't be afraid to not only show up, but to take up all the space and to use that voice and to believe that you are worthy and to believe that you are more than enough and that you are part of the change. Part of the work and that I was sharing with some of your staff here is that when men are part of the revolution and women are stepping fully into their light, we realize how powerful and unstoppable we are. And people will, even in our community, they're gonna try to stop you. My tias, my grandma, she's like, ¿por qué no te aplacas? Why don't you calm down? Why aren't you like a good Mexican woman and just like find yourself a man and have some babies? Like, why do you have to go get your degree? Why do you have to be doing all this stuff? She thought I sold my shirts at the swap meet, which I have no problem selling shirts at the swap meet. But I remember she was trying to pass down this very narrow box of what it's like to be a successful Latina woman. And I remember I told her, Tita, I define success not by who I am with or who I'm not with. I define success, I'm getting an education, I'm independent, I started my business, I wrote a book, and most importantly, I'm learning to love myself and be proud of all of who I am. Every part of me, I have taken the time to heal, and I've taken the time to love. And that definition of success is small. Está chiquita, me queda chiquita compared to what I'm working towards and what I've already accomplished and what I define as success. We don't have to fit in those boxes that have been passed down to us. And I remember I told my grandma, like, soy una mujer empoderada. and she told me, like, you know, she went off on me. She like roasted me head to toe for like an hour. And then the next day she told me, she's like, nadie me enseñó a respetarme a mí misma. Nobody taught her to love herself. They only told her what to do. how to dress, how to speak, how to treat men, how men should treat her. But they didn't tell her to love herself, to be proud of who she was as a person. And I want to tell you to take the time to be proud of who you are as a whole person, as your cultural identity, your sexual orientation. I remember when I came out to my family, it was as if I told them that I I was about to die. And like if it was something horrible. And I remember checking them too. It's like, actually, I'm happy and I'm full and I'm alive. And this is the healthiest I've ever felt. And again, my brother came through. My brother was like, you need to treat her with kindness. You need to treat her with respect. And simply because she chose to love another woman does not give you an excuse to degrade her and shame her. That was my brother talking to my mom. And then my uncle, my grandma went off on me in a homophobic rant. And then my uncle came through. And he was like, he told her, Mama, ni se te ocurra, don't you dare, ni se te ocurra faltarle el respeto, ni tratarla diferente. Si la amas, la vas a ver feliz y te va a dar alegría y orgullo de todo lo que es y todo lo que está haciendo. If you love her, you're going to be proud of who she is and all she's accomplished. And most importantly, you're going to be happy that she's happy. And that was a very tangible moment in which I experienced a revolution in my family, a breaking of cycles, but it started with me learning to love myself and to own the full intersection of who I was. And to say, ¿y qué? And what? This is me, and what? And I'm choosing to love every part of it. ¿Y qué? And I want you to take that on too, as you're learning, as you're developing in your identity, to be like, this is who I am, ¿y qué? This is how I'm showing up, ¿y qué? As a Latinx person, as a student, as a child of immigrants, as a survivor, as a queer person, as a man, as a woman, you get to own yourself fully and unapologetically. And I tell people the most important thing you can do with your life is learn to love yourself. Because once you learn that, you step in fully into your power and you are unstoppable. But you cannot love yourself if you're still dealing with internalized depression. You cannot love yourself if you have not recognized the beauty of all of who you are and the history of what made you you, and also deciding where you want to go and who you want to become for you and for the next generation. So thank you. Thank you all for listening. Mándenme preguntas. I'm ready to chismear. I'm tired of speaking so much. And thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was such a beautiful conversation. Like I found myself tearing up a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of people here that attended do relate to you a lot. I know I do for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for that. I just want to introduce myself real quick to let everyone know who I am. My name is Laura Bernal. I'm a senior here at University of Idaho. I'm currently studying sociology with an emphasis in crime and minor in justice studies. I'm so excited to be here. I'm part of OMA, so thank you. Alrighty, so let's get some questions started. Alrighty, so our first question is, where did your brother learn to speak up and identify you as equal to your mother?
Well, my brother and I were close, and something that helped both of us, that we were both very, very open with who we were. And he learned that modeled through me and through other women in his life, through his friends, that he recognized too, I think on his own, what oppression was at home. And that he can literally sit there and not lift a finger and still be praised simply for existing and being a man. And he saw us as It's like 3 girls and a boy, and he's the baby. I'm the oldest. And he saw, you know, the responsibility on my shoulders versus the opposite on him. And as he grew older, he quickly learned that when he spoke, my mom listened. When I spoke, me regañaban. I got shamed. I got told like I was crazy, I was too much, I needed to be quiet, I needed to be obedient, I need to be good. But he also saw me standing up for myself. I quickly learned to be like, actually, no. No me voy a quedar calladita. Hago esto porque quiero. I do this because I want to. And he quickly caught on that he could join me. Because if he stayed quiet, the shame and all of that was going to keep going on. So when I received those messages, he would be quick to be like, actually, no, that's not cool. That's not fair. That's sexist. She's allowed to do that because she wants to. Like, you let me do that, and I don't even have to ask for permission. And as a woman, I had to ask for permission for everything. And he got to do whatever he wanted. And he quickly learned that his voice was important in my fight for justice at home.
Yeah, I feel like that's so common, especially like Hispanic Latinos, like so common. I went through that as well, still battling through it. So thank you for sharing that experience. Another question that kind of popped up while you were discussing, like how did you gain that confidence to like speak up for yourself and influence your like siblings and your family?
Good question. I love that question. I remember 2 moments. I was like talking to somebody about something I was struggling with. And this was when I was married. And this woman, older woman, that's like the first time I talked to her. And she told me something like, your life is just as important. And she's like, you need to live accordingly. And then I started to realize that a lot of the people in my family, a lot of the women and men in my family, but mostly the women, they would always treat me as if my life and my needs and my voice weren't as important as the men in my life. And when I started to notice that, I was like, no. I started to believe like, actually, yeah, my life is just as important. Who made it so that it wasn't so? I started to challenge every time somebody didn't treat me as if I was just as important, simply because I was a woman. So I remember something would happen and then like my mom would be like, ay, pobrecito, or what are you doing to meet this man's needs? And I was like, I need to meet my needs too. I need to take care of myself too. I have responsibilities. I have a career. I have goals too. And they're just as important. And I'm going to live accordingly. And the more I started to practice that, the more people started to respond too, because I didn't give them any other choice. But it took a matter of believing it and practicing it for myself. And I had to ask myself, how am I going to treat myself as if I'm important? How am I going to love myself today? It was baby steps.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Moving on to the second one. How did you continue to bring in your parents to these conversations, and like were there like consequences or something like that?
Yes, y'all. It wasn't all pretty like, oh my gosh, like, oh my, now we're all part of the rainbow gang. Now we're all super empowered. No, I invited them in by starting the conversation, but also by listening. I needed to understand their story and where they were coming from. I needed to understand the messages that they passed down, that they were receiving, that they internalized. And that helped me engage and enter in, because if I didn't come from a place of compassion, and there was times I came from just like anger, or I was just like so frustrated, like, how can they do this? How can they say that? How can they believe this? But then once I listened, when I asked, like, tell me what happened in your life, or where did you believe that, or who told you that? How long have you believed this? Then conversations started to happen. And then we started to build trust in each other. They started to build trust that I was going to listen to them, and I started to trust that they were going to listen to me. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily agree, but at least we have a foundation now where we can listen to each other. And that took years too, because there was consequences. Like, imagine me coming up and, you know, telling my mom, like, that remark was racist. And actually, I mean, I did tell her that. And I made a shirt, Racismo del Diablo, because she's like this very Christian woman. And I was like, that's racist, and racism is not of God, lady. And at first, she wasn't happy. But we got to enter into a conversation. This year, she's like, hey, do you remember that shirt, Racismo del Diablo? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, can I have one on my size? And I'm like, you know, you inspired it, right? She's like, yeah, don't tell nobody. But it's not like an overnight thing. It's like a constant, you have to show up and be willing to have hard and uncomfortable situations. And at first, they may react personally against you. But if you continue to show up and listen to them, that's how the conversations keep going and they don't become attacks.
Good question. Do you have any influences that helped you along your journey?
Yeah, I couldn't hear. Perdón.
Did you have any influences that helped you along your journey?
Influencers, I think yes. I think like social media is a huge part in how this generation, how we're educating and learning from one another. So Prisca Dorcas, founder of Latinx Rebels, I remember hearing her speak, and I was in Seattle. I had not been, it was like 30 or 40 of us in that room. I had not been in a room in Seattle with so many brown people at the same time. And I remember I was crying the whole time, and I was like soaking up every one of her words, like, yes, okay, yes, like, okay, she gets it. And she also told us, like, now it's your turn to share your story, to show up, to do the things that you're passionate about. And there's been so many Afro-Latinas that have been rising up and sharing their experience. And like that, for me, like, I'm like, I need to sit and listen, because our community has not done right, our Afro-Latinx community. So she is Melania. She is this beautiful Afro-Latina poet that I remember we shared poetry together, and she was sharing like some of the stuff that she'd gone through and some of the treatment that she'd experienced. And that was moments where I need to sit down and listen and learn. And that's a big part of our education and cultural identity, is cultural humility as well.
What advice do you have for students working through internalized homophobia, or who are afraid of coming out because of homophobia within their family or community?
Oh, one, abrazos, because it's a journey. It is, I remember I started to question and be curious when I was in elementary, middle school. And then in high school, and then like we started getting super churchy, and then like the homophobia was like everywhere. And I remember my mom saying some very homophobic things that stayed with me, and then made me like close up and be like, oh my goodness, I cannot even go there within myself, and much less within my family. And then when I started to really, and when I say self-love, it doesn't mean like take a bubble bath. No, that's part of my self-love, because I love soaking in the water. But it also means going to therapy. It also means looking at yourself and the places that you are hurting and the places that you've ignored in yourself. And when I started to do that with myself, I realized I have hated and suppressed this part of myself because I've been so afraid, and because there's been so much shame around it. Not only for me, but for my family and my culture. And it took me a long time to fully step in to fully loving all of my identity. And I realized that like once I decided that I was worthy of love as a queer woman, me valió lo demás. I stopped caring so much, because I knew and I finally believed that I was worthy of that love and respect and dignity, and that I was tired of living with that shame. So I stepped into it, but also I first surrounded myself with people that loved and supported me and that were safe. Like my friends, my siblings. Like I knew that they had my back. And I knew that they were fully loved me and accepted me too. And so when I was fully ready to meet them in that love and acceptance, then I knew I had a community to fall back on and to process with, because I knew how it was going to be hard to have those conversations with my parents and grandparents. And it's a journey, and be loving to yourself every step of the way.
So much. As one of the many Latina here on campus, they were raised to stay quiet. Que calladita es oh, I'm so sorry. Que calladita es la más bonita, like you said. So that's what she did her whole life, even up to this point. How can she start to push herself to get out of that? Like try to, sorry, I'm going to repeat exactly what she said. I tried, pero me asustó de que algo malo me va a pasar a mí. Yeah, like repercussion.
Yes. Start small, but also know that your voice is important, and know that what you have to say is important, because who you are is important. And so much of our culture is like, ¿qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? Or what are people going to think if they see me speaking up? Or what are people going to think if they see me doing this or dressing like this? And I think that's like a big part of why I started doing my shirts, because I didn't have to say anything sometimes, but I that was like my first step of like, actually, this is me. I don't care. And then it invited conversations in. Pero I would say, don't be afraid of your voice. For many years, I was afraid of my voice. I was afraid of my truth. I was afraid of my story. I was afraid of what people were going to say, until I got tired of being quiet. And even though I was shaking when I first raised my hand to speak up, even though I was shaking when I first shared my first poem in public, when I first shared my poem out loud in a mic, I remember I was shaking. And I still shake sometimes, but deep down, I know that my voice is important and it's worthy to be shared.
Thank you. Did you anticipate becoming part of the digital revolution? And did you have extensive graphic design experience before you started integrating social justice into it?
No, no, a big no to both of those things. So that's why I tell people, don't be afraid to just step in and take up space. And I did it for myself. No graphic design experience, nada. And a lot of time, and I'm gonna be real, like I have designed and written whole things on the toilet. And you don't need to be this like master genius graphic designer to get your message out there, to create, to take up space, because all of us have important things to say and do, be, create. And a lot of times that fear, that imposter syndrome stops us. And I'm one of like the, in my opinion, least qualified people like on paper. And yet, because I chose to believe in the importance of my message and my purpose, and honestly, I wrote because I needed it for myself. And as I started to share, I'm like, other people need that too. They started to connect, and I started to feel less alone, and they started to feel less alone. And then it did become a movement and a revolution, and we got to grow in our power as a community. And it's not because I have this tech digital graphic design degree. No, it's because I chose to believe and I knew what was important to me.
So beautiful. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. We'll see. So did you ever become emotionally exhausted trying to build yourself up?
Yes. I tell people healing is not pretty. Self-love is not always pretty or glamorous. Um, and it's in those moments where you're the most exhausted, the most drained, where you feel the most ashamed, or where you're like, I really fucked up this time. That's when you need self-love the most. That's when you need to be the most compassionate with yourself. That's when you need to be like, that was hard, I'm drained, and I'm still worthy of love. And you also need to learn to set boundaries. In those moments when I feel emotionally exhausted, I set boundaries in what I can and cannot do, who I can see and cannot see, and what I need. And then I have to check in, what do you need in this moment? And then I make sure I meet those needs. Um, I'm currently working in my master's as a therapist. That's emotionally exhausting too. And it's like, I'm a human working through my own stuff, helping other humans work through their stuff too. And that's when you need, that's when I'm like, the beauty of boundaries and self-care and self-love and compassion. For as a human, you're going to be imperfect 100% of the time, and you need to love yourself 100% of the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I plan to hopefully be a social worker, so like I for sure need to like get used to that. So thank you. Yeah, I think we're gonna end it right there. Thank you so much on behalf of the Latinx Planning Committee and the Office of Multicultural Affairs for inviting you. You did such a good job. Thank you so much. I loved hearing from you, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. We look forward to hopefully meeting you in person. Hopefully in the future when we can. Yeah, hopefully you can come back to campus, something like that. But we wish you the best in everything you do. Thank you for being our voice. And yeah, thank you so much.
Gracias.